Welcome back. Now, ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa says that after 30 years of democracy, the governing party still remains a party of choice. The ANC celebrated its 112th year anniversary celebrations at the Mbombela Stadium in Mpumalanga on Saturday. Ramaphosa highlighted the ANC's achievements as a governing party, with the party's manifesto outlining its future plans expected to be launched next month. So, to look at the ANC's January 8th statement and also unpack what we heard, we joined in studio by SABC senior political reporter Samkele Maseko, as well as political analyst joining us virtually, Dr. Ongama Mtimka. Thanks so much for your time this morning, gentlemen. And let's just get straight into it. Dr. Mtimka, let me start with you. I must say, listening to President Ramaphosa during Dr. Makubane's funeral and again on Saturday, have you sensed something different in his delivery, in just overall, in the president and how he's coming across of late?
Yeah, thank you. So we've waited for a long time to see the tone, the stature that the president has taken. I think that the siege that the ANC is facing and the multiple skirmishes that the party is facing going into this year's election has probably been the final thing, that's gotten him awake. I think the day I did fall asleep, I think it was due to me being tired, but the delivery was quite good. Yes, it's something else about the content itself, but yeah, I think there's a boldness, there's a taking the fight to the opponents of the ANC. It's going to be an exciting election year.
Indeed, and of course, Samkele, you were there. Give us a sense of what played out on Saturday. I mean, there was quite a bit happening in the lead up to Saturday's event, but on Saturday, that stadium, everything that happened there, give us a sense.
Essentially, the story began with the National Executive Committee on the Friday preceding the week of the January 8 statement, where the NEC held its meeting, where this January 8 statement was discussed. The president of the ANC came with his usual State of the Nation January 8 address. ANC, NEC members, particularly the younger generation, stood up and said, Mr. President, with all due respect with you and your drafters, that statement is not the one to be read out and to be delivered at the stadium. We don't want a State of the Nation address. We want a political address, an address that says that we are under siege here, we are going to war, our detractors are gang up against us, and we need to fight back. And then that's when Togo Didiza, David Makura, Kuzuko Kolimpi, Mtumiseni Ntuli were then roped in to draft the January 8 statement for the president of the ANC in collaboration with him, with those like Mzwandile Masina, Andile Lungisa saying, and Supra Muhammad Pilo saying that we must come out swinging in that statement, saying that we are going on a war path against our detractors. Also, don't shy away from taking a jab directly to the former president, who has decided to launch an onslaught against the ANC. Hence, you saw him referring to other parties such as snakes, saying that those parties formed as breakaways from the ANC, end up being far worse than right-wing organizations, basically pretty much taking up the same line as Gwede Mantashe, in a way likening former President Zuma's now MK movement as a rebel organization that has moved away from the African National Congress. So it is in pretty much a sense an NEC statement that came out very political. For instance, you look at Zamani Sow saying that it's for the very first time that he's seen Cyril Ramaphosa in that particular mode, where his character that is not seen in the public glare is finally coming out. Many people are saying that he's got many personalities, a personality that is there within the public domain, then a very ruthless person behind doors, particularly knowing what he did to individuals such as Tom Moyane, the former SARS commissioner, Ace Sekgobela Magashule, amongst many of his detractors.
And it's interesting because it was evident that someone else was drafting the speech here. It was not business as usual. But then, getting into the achievements of 30 years of governance of the ANC, the president outlining those achievements. But I thought it was interesting that he didn't elaborate too much. And I think it speaks to your point, Samkele, where he was probably told this is not the State of the Nation address, just outlining them. But of course, the question that comes to mind is not, the 85% of people that have running water reticulated to their homes or electrified houses. It's about the quality of those services, which perhaps was not highlighted or dwelled upon, not surprisingly.
Oh, sure. In fact, so interestingly, the politics of that message. Wow, it's interesting that Samkele had went into the process, but quite correctly, the politics of the statement itself and what message the ANC is sending were dictated to it by the whole 2024 is our 1994. It's time for a reset campaigning that's been done by the other political parties. And by the way, as somebody who used to work in local government before in the late 2000s, I used to be frustrated at what was unfair critique, where in order for one to drive an agenda of general failure, there used to be misrepresentation of facts. I think what this speech has done is to say to the opposition, if you are going to challenge the ANC around an idea of 30 years of misrule, you better be sure that you stick to what is truthful. Indeed, in order to attack the message of the ANC in this upcoming election on the basis of what it has failed to do, one needs not deny what it has been able to do. Because as you quite correctly point out, Sakina, there has been connections, mass connections to services. I'm in Nelson Mandela Bay. I've seen so many new residential areas. Obviously, the same critique remains that they are remote from the towns, but they are well built. People have been taken from under dangerous power lines and have been relocated to new residential. I can count no less than probably about 7 new residential areas where that have been delivered by the post-apartheid government. So the challenge, though, is that, yes, indeed, there could have been many more that were delivered without needing rectification. There could have been many more things that were done to create a lot more jobs than there has been. So I think going forward, the opposition is going to need to go back to the drawing board and say, what precisely is a challenge about the last 30 years and what has worked about the last 30 years? Because as much as citizens are able to counter the messages of government by their lived realities with the quality of services, they can also counter opposition messages who say nothing has changed because they live in new places that were never existent before.
And I think the president driving that point home, quite energetically, that we have done a lot and you can't deny that they have. But of course, no doubt the opposition will try and find holes to poke into that. Coming to the question of the ANC and coalitions. Now, to that point, the president coming out very forcefully saying that they want to win an outright majority, given the experience that they've had with these coalitions at local government level, Samkele. So talk to us about what's happening in the background and what actually is behind this particular sentiment, given that their own research has indicated that perhaps this is the direction in which we are moving.
It's actually on the coalitions that the president of the ANC is pretty much like most of his allies in the National Executive Committee, questioning whether the ANC still really needs to be in some sort of working or voting relationship with the EFF in these metros. Many have cited the crumbling state of Ekurhuleni as an example. They've spoken about other municipalities such as eThekwini, the eThekwini metro, saying that all is not well with this working relationship with the economic freedom fighters. You need a new framework of coalitions because the current method of coalitions and South Africans voting no party into majority is creating problems on the issues of service delivery. So the ANC is trying to avoid these coalitions that have seemingly sprung up and especially the ones here in Gauteng and KwaZulu-Natal with the economic freedom fighters. They've pretty much used Nelson Mandela Bay as an example as well, saying that there's been no stable coalition in that specific metro since the DA took over, subsequently the ANC and its coalition partners. And they've used Tshwane as well, saying the DA itself has struggled in Tshwane to fully manage those coalitions and to provide services to the people of that specific area. You look at Tshwane as an example, and Joburg. At times, these two metro municipalities fail in refuse collection. They fail to do the basics. Water provision becomes a problem to these two particular municipalities and other municipalities within the province of Gauteng. It's also escalated now to the province of KwaZulu-Natal in the eThekwini metro. And that has become a research methodology for the ANC to say these metros have failed dismally under coalitions, and that must not cascade to a provincial and at a national level, because it will ultimately be a disaster. But historically, if you look at KwaZulu-Natal, there was once a coalition between the ANC and the IFP when Mbombela first became the premier of that province. It was relatively stable. But subsequent to that, the coalitions between the ANC and the NFP in municipalities after the 2011 local government elections, they were relatively stable as well. But subsequent to that, with the infusion and of more politicians being introduced to what may say the bad politics of South Africa that started emerging after 2005 and 2007 NGC and Polokwane conferences of crass materialism within South African politics, it has cascaded to other political formations of politicians living lavish lives, expensive bills at nights with exotic women. And that tells you that it's the general problem that people perceive to be of the ANC, of Vianos, expensive alcohol, and this nightlife cascades to other political formations as well, which is what has destroyed South African politics.
Isn't that the other part of the problem with coalitions, though? It's not just about the factors that you've so eloquently outlined, Samkele, but it's also about the fact that the ANC, from a bottom line perspective, has had to cede some of these portfolios in municipalities to other parties who have now, as you rightly pointed out, also started to basically, exhibit the same sort of factors. And therefore, we see what we see with these coalitions. Dr. Mtimka?
I couldn't agree more there, Sakina. The challenge, I was hoping to chip into this discussion. The challenge is that the quality of leadership in these coalitions and also in the ANC leaves much to be desired. I know that I'm one of the huge proponents of generational shift, but it looks like the comrades misunderstand when we say generational shift for putting in novices in government who are clueless about how to lead. There's very few examples of politicians who are switched on. I don't know whether it's due to I'm a victim of his PR campaign or what, but in Joburg, for example, if you look at the safety MEC, Mgcini Chwaku,
yes,
you see an MEC who's there on the ground in terms of police security issues. I don't know how many other MMCs understand the role of leading their administrations to achieve results, and this is a challenge for me. So when people get there and all they care about is how to swindle resources, how to redirect resources, and not show any sense of commitment to the portfolio, to lead it, to overcome stumbling blocks, to perform. One of the things also, Sakina, that we in the media and academia need to look at is the deliberate sabotage that officials in municipalities do. I've been looking at some municipalities, I don't want to say now, a lot closer in the last, say, 5 months. I was so shocked to see things which had become taken for granted in the municipal system no longer being done.
Dr.
So
Mtimka,
it's a challenge that we need to look at.
Unfortunately, we have run out of time. But I tell you what, we will have a lot more time to discuss these matters. This is a very important election year, and no doubt the election manifestos will be launched by the various political parties, which will give us more time to unpack in detail what it is that they are offering the South African electorate. So that's where we leave it. Thanks so much, SABC senior political reporter Samkele Maseko and political analyst Dr. Ongama Mtimka, reflecting on the ANC's 112th anniversary celebration this past weekend.